Welcome to the Comic Binge. I am your host, Paul Herman, and today we are continuing our adventures down Fantastic Four lane, you could say. We've been covering random parts of the mythos of Fantastic Four. We're not staying in one spot. We're kind of gliding ourselves around, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think it was in due time we got started at the very beginning. You could say, not even you could say, to me, this is the birth of the Marvel Universe. We're going to start at the very beginning of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's monumental and influential, iconic, if you will, Fantastic Four run, starting at the first 18 issues. But before we go any further, let me please go and go subscribe to the YouTube or to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Appreciate it for everyone who already has. Like the video, subscribe, all that jazz. I hate doing this stuff, but it's necessary because it helps people discover the channel. And if you haven't also already, go and to the playlist section. You will find tons of videos of things you'll want to watch, whether it be independent, science fiction, Marvel, DC, about MCU stuff, DC Studio stuff. I got a little bit of everything. We got me and Kurtis talking about epics and DC's finest. We got all kinds of stuff, Kurtis. I mean, at least I think we do. So it's a lot of fun. Kurtis and I have done a bunch of Fantastic Four episodes, and they're a blast. And we're gonna hopefully keep doing them because they're just so much fun, Kurtis. Fantastic Four is it's like peas and carrots, right?
Yeah. Yep. It's one of my favorite titles that is just consistently, I think, with only the very odd misstep, has been consistently good for pretty much its entire run.
Yeah. I'm gonna put you on the spot. Which misstep would that be, you think?
Okay, well, personally, the stuff that I don't like, or it's not even that I don't like it, it's just not as good as the other stuff. Steve Englehart's run starts off great and has a really hard landing, but that has a lot of editorial interference that really derail things, and you can tell. I was not a huge fan of Walt Simonson's Fantastic Four. It's not like it's terrible, but believe it or not, it's not my favorite. And then Dan Slott's Fantastic Four, I think, was not really great either. So those are kind of maybe the three that come to my mind. Okay,
I read the first I think 12-ish issues of Dan Slott's run, and I like Dan Slott. I defend Dan Slott a lot.
Those are the best 12 issues of his run.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Because I mean I thought it was okay, but when he had the Thing beat the Hulk, I was out. I was like, I'm out. No. This is fan service for Dan Slott. No, this is not. Sorry. No, thank you. So anyway.
You don't think there's any possible way that the Thing could beat the Hulk?
No! Unless he's a pine cone. That's the only time the Hulk should be, and whatever, right? Maybe a gray Hulk, because that's weaker of the Hulks, like the pine cone thing did. There has to be a legitimate reason for it, and I thought his reasoning was, if I remember correctly, just didn't make sense. The Hulk, he should not be able to knock the Hulk. And I know a lot of people have said that this is, or that he was under control of the Puppet Master, and that might have altered his strength a little bit, which I can forgive, but that was never emphasized in his story, which at least I remember. So yeah, I will fight you though on Walt Simonson. I effing love that run because it has one of my favorite Doctor Doom stories in it.
Oh yeah, is it the time travel one? Yeah,
love it.
I mean, that is a standout for sure. Absolutely, that was a very good issue. I mean, we'll have to dive into Simonson's FF at some point, and then we can talk about that in more detail.
I think that's a good. Yeah, I think that's I'll be fascinating because there's lots of great stuff. I've been a long time since I've read the whole thing, but I grew up what or reading those issues a lot. So I have a nostalgia for them too. So, you know. So anyway, so Curtis is back, and we're diving into the first 18 issues, which is the epic here, which I'll eventually pop out. We got this great epic, which is appropriately titled, Curtis, World's Greatest Comic Magazine.
That's right.
That is, I mean, whoever came up with that idea was chef's kiss. That was perfect. So, for those who don't know, or which I don't know, if you don't know Curtis and you're watching this, you're insane. But if Curtis is like the epic machine, he is the man behind the epics, in my opinion, that keeps that thing going and helps people. Well, in a sense of like keeping the buzz around, keeping people informed. Like you have helped orchestrate that whole line, in my opinion, and I think I'm so grateful because it's a great line. So, tell people, if you can, a little bit about this epic in general, and specifically, if any special notes or anything you want to talk about with this epic at all.
Well, I mean, it's not the very first. While it's number one, it's the very first volume of the Epic Collections. It wasn't the first volume that the Epic Collections released, because they released these books out of order. And so it was like the third one or something like that. And it was when Marvel had, for Marvel's 75th anniversary, they released the volume ones of all of their main titles, kind of all at the same time.
I didn't know that.
So,
Okay.
like, yeah, Spider-Man Volume 1, Avengers, X-Men, Wolverine, Silver Surfer, and Fantastic Four, Captain America. Like, all of those titles, Hulk was another one. All of those titles got their number one volume right at the same time. Whatever year that was. Let me see. I can't remember. It was like 10 years ago now, I think.
10 years.
Yeah, 2014. It was in 2014. And so, yeah, and that was this material has been reprinted so many times, like Masterworks, Omnibus, and a lot of these issues always show up in compilations where it's like doing first appearances stuff, because especially Fantastic Four #1 is iconic for so many different reasons, and so it's not like you can't get your hands on this material. It's really well restored. If you like the restorations that Marvel does for the Marvel Masterworks, it does that. It has all of those files in here, and so, yeah, it looks as good as it can get, considering its age. And Marvel at the time was not really in the business of really saving and cataloging a lot of their oldest material. In fact, a lot of it's gone missing just over time and that kind of stuff. So, when it comes to restoring stuff like this, they have to rely on a hodgepodge of different things: some original art, some film negatives, some scans from comics. So it's a little bit inconsistent in that sense, but considering its age, it actually looks really great.
That's fascinating. It's so sad to hear, when comic companies, they do these massive, awesome reprints and they can't go back to the original art. I have that. Speaking of, we were talking about Walt Simonson. I have like an artist edition Star Wars Walt Simonson deluxe, and it's gorgeous. And it's like, it'll randomly have like missing original art. Here's the actual page from the comic book blowing up. I'm like, suck. It's like, damn.
But what can you do? So I've been talking with the guy, like Mike Zeck's agent, and he is Mike Zeck's biggest fan. Always has been since the start of Mike Zeck's career, and has bought like tons of his artwork, had all of his GI Joe covers and all of that kind of stuff, right? And then his house burned down in the Pacific Palisades. And all of that art went up with it. And so it's stuff like that. It's like, and I think Eric Larson lost a ton of his artwork from him when his house caught on fire a number of years ago as well. And
I remember that.
And like that just, over time, that stuff happens. Yep.
Yeah, I remember watching. Have you watched that 2000 AD documentary at all?
No.
It's really well done. I love it. If you guys are documentary fiends like me and you love comics, 2000 AD's documentary is fantastic. Dave Gibbons is on there, and he goes, like he said he'd go down to the offices with all the original art, and there'd be like just a big nasty place of like just where all this art's like scattered on the floor and getting wet, and like I'm
Oh
just
no.
like I'm just like, oh, it's just like this stuff is just like by legends like
Hurt.
him.
It
It's like,
hurts.
yeah, it's just like, no, don't do that, God. So anyway, so yeah, if you're unfamiliar with kind of what me and Curtis have been doing, it's been kind of been like winging it in a good way of as far as like just kind of just going through like sections of the Fantastic Four and analyzing the kind of the stories and whatnot. And what I always think it's fascinating, Curtis, is characterizations of the four. I would say have predominantly have before I get into my little spiel here. They've been somewhat again. From what I remember of all the characters, there's usually a consistency with these characters, right? For the most part. Obviously, some have to develop, like Sue, thank God, develops outside of these 18 issues. But like I would say, there's definitely changes as they go, right? And but I would say like the core of the characters try to stay intact for the most part. I don't know. But I would say, whenever we start this off, I always feel like, it's always interesting to see who gets characterizations right, who gets it kind of wrong. And one of the things that stuck out to me reading this, and I'm curious what you think, it's just kind of Mr. Fantastic a little bit. He is very interesting in these first 18 issues to where I don't really get, and maybe this is purposeful because as we all know in Spider-Man, you know, Stan Lee developed these characters and they definitely like changed. They evolved over time. Spider-Man Peter Parker evolves and gets older and develops and I would say I wouldn't say well completely changes, but he changes considerably in my opinion. As a giant
Does
Spider-Man
for sure.
fan and as a giant Spider-Man fan, there you go. I could say like, yeah, I'm wondering, that was one thing I was fascinated by reading Stan Lee and Ditko stuff. And I've only read the first 18 issues of Fantastic Four's original run. I haven't read any of Jack of besides their issue here or there, like Galactus stuff. I haven't read all of their run. So I don't know if this is just a Stan Lee thing right now, but the first thing that jumped out to me, Curtis, was Mr. Fantastic's characterization is vastly at this point kind of different, not vastly, somewhat different than what we get later on. Am I losing my mind? Tell me, as a Fantastic Four expert, how wrong, how nuts am I right now?
I would say that all of them, there are core features of the characters that carry through, and then there
Mhm.
are certain personality traits that get dropped. And
Okay.
as the characters evolve, and you are right in that Mr. Fantastic is sort of a different character. This cover is not a good example of that.
I did it on purpose. I did it on purpose.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think they play him up a little bit older than usual in these older
Yeah.
comics than what he's typically how he's typically aged kind of nowadays. I think they made him younger these days than he is in the original. He's also a father now, right? A father of
Mhm.
multiple children, and has had way more life experience. All of this stuff these days, with like the Council of Reeds and all of that kind of the Illuminati has made him act differently as well because of that stuff. Um,
Illuminati. Nice.
Batman's comic is not wrong. Is not wrong. This is definitely until Kirby leaves the book. I think volume 1 is probably the weakest volume until Kirby leaves the book. Yeah. So this volume is definitely the weakest of Kirby's run because Kirby's run, he learns and he evolves through
Oh,
his
for sure.
progression very quickly. Um, okay, so yeah, Reed's a little bit different. Sue, of course, is the damsel of in distress, and she's always kind of afraid of things and all of this kind of stuff. And far cry from the strong woman character. Of course, she's now a parent as well, so like her worldview changes and that kind of thing. Johnny Storm, he's a kid. The problem with um, the character keeping their character traits the same is that if you're going to age the kids, well, is Johnny Storm going to be a hot-headed goofball his entire life, or is he going to mature? Because it's understandable
Mhm.
for him to act the way he is as a teenager, but once he's 35, you hope that he grows out of it. And some writers, he hasn't grown out of it, and it makes him super annoying of a character, I think. But um, I think the one that has been consistently the same throughout the entire FF
I know you're
uh,
going. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's the thing.
Yeah.
He's the same, and he's grounded, and he brings the
Mhm.
stability to the team, and that has never changed throughout Fantastic Four's 60-year history or so. And yeah, Reed and Ben were World War II
That's
vets.
right.
That
Dang.
with the shifting timeline, like the sliding timeline or whatever time, you can't really do that just because their ages would be so old now. Um, but yeah, they have that history together, and that's kind of those kind of stories are where what solidify them as friends throughout the year. But yeah, but even still, even if you're reading these and their characters are a little bit different than what you're used to reading more modern comics, it's like they're
Mhm.
still the same characters. And if they
Yeah.
are out of character, then maybe it's because something in the story is influencing that and causing them to act differently than you would expect, which in some cases is definitely the case.
Yeah, you nailed it, man. Like when I was reading this, I would say in order of difference of characterization, I would say as from the most to the least affected would be Sue, obviously, then Reed, then Johnny. It feels like he's an interesting character as he evolves over time because I think the hot-headed, like, young brashness should always be kind of centered there somewhere, but he's been through too much to not just to be a hot-headed, immature idiot too, right? So it's like there's a very delicate balance with him, but I feel like the core of him is still essentially the same to an extent. But yeah, the thing is ultimately the same character, and he's the GOAT, in my opinion. Like, he's just
Oh
the
yeah,
best. Yeah, I mean, and I think I think grounded is a really good way of no pun intended because he's rocks, right?
yeah.
No, but like there he's so relatable, because who doesn't feel like they can't go outside sometimes, and feel like everyone's gonna judge them for how they look. I mean, he is such a relatable character, but he's also like such a loving guy. You can't, and he's so blunt. You just can't help but love that. Like there is something about the earnestness and honesty of the thing, and his rashness and his bluntness can be brutal sometimes, but it works for the character because he is so endearing and you relate to him so much. You understand where he's coming from, right? So I, it was
So
really cool to
I
please.
will say that is a little bit of a change as well, because in these first 18 issues, he's not quite the lovable guy yet. Because most of the
I
time
would
through this
say
volume,
okay.
he's spent being grumpy, being mad, being upset, not knowing how to relate to people in his new form, even toward his own teammates. He's a little abrasive, and but that quickly changes.
See, I see your point, but to me, it still works. Like he even as I'm reading it now, and I know back then, I know why he was a favorite because he is so lovable because he is so blunt. He can be kind of funny, and there is that all that's there. All that's he hasn't maybe haven't fleshed it out to be that charming character quite yet. But to me, that's what makes the character work in these 18 issues is that even despite all those things, Curtis, he still comes off that way because he's
Yeah.
funny and like he's very obvious. Like okay, case in point. Let me Exhibit A, Curtis. I
Yeah.
had this cracked me the hell up, and this should go, in my opinion, such a strength to Jack Kirby. Like this, I was laughing my ass off with this. You know, like this is what makes the thing lovable. Is he's like, you know what, Reed, and he makes his point, and he puts Reed in a freaking like little bin. Like, how awesome is that? Like, that's hilarious,
It's pretty good. Yeah.
and that it's that kind of stuff that he does throughout the run that really makes him such a fun, loving character because he's obviously like he's like, Reed, we're going with you. You can't stop us. And he makes his point, and he makes it in a very funny way. The Reed's like, okay, I get it now. I don't know. It's there is something to this with the character that makes a lot of sense, that why he's lovable, and things that he does like that are why people, even then in these first 18 issues, they fall in love with the character. I mean, I don't know. It was very evident and very obvious to me why he came across, so lovable already. I mean, like, and like the stuff like this, I mean, I can't wait to go and read more of the Kirby stuff because just like with Ditko, I mean, like Ditko's first, whatever issues weren't like the first, at least 6, 8 issues. They weren't like stellar, in my opinion. They're good, but they're not like, to me, like the pinnacle, like Master Planner, like Chef's Kiss era. Um, but like you can tell Kirby knows what the hell he's doing with stuff like this. Like this is just ugh, gorgeous.
Well, I think it's important to remember that at this point, Kirby has been doing comics for a long time.
Yeah, with
And he
romance and stuff
is,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, he is already a veteran in comic art. And so, jump starting a title like this, he knows what to do. He knows how to do it right. He knows how to tell a story, and it definitely shows in sequences like this. Um, so you want to talk about issue number one? I think we should spend some
Yeah.
time
Go for it, man.
because
Yeah,
that's
please.
kind of the big one there.
The bell cow. Yeah.
Before Fantastic Four number one, Marvel didn't really dabble in superheroes. I mean, they had historically, yes, dating back to
Yeah.
the like
Atlas. Yeah.
the late 30s with the original Human Torch, Namor the Submariner, and Captain America. Uh, but by 1961, they hadn't really been doing a whole lot with superheroes uh, at all. Most of their books were geared toward anthology type stories like monster titles and police titles and westerns, romance, funny animals. Like they had all of this stuff except for the superheroes. And so they had a chance to try something out, something that was new and different. But if you really look at the type of story this is, it actually isn't really that new or that different because it's kind of very similar to the monster stories that they were doing before, or the science fiction stories in outer space and such. This book is broken up into a few different parts, and the first part is
Mhm.
the origin story, and it reads very similar to a science fiction story that would have been told in like EC Comics or something like
Yeah.
that. Just a short 8-page story, and then it switches over to the Mole Man story and Monster Island, and that feels like it could be one of the stories straight out of one of their monster books that they had been publishing the month before. And so the thing that made this one stand out, I think, is that they really focused on the characters, the four main characters. And that's
Mhm.
something that those other characters didn't do, or those other books didn't do. Um, if you read some of their old horror stories, they're just short little 8-page stories. They didn't really focus on the person who was in it. They would focus on the supernatural aspect, or they'd focus on the things that are happening to them and how the person would react to that situation. Whereas this comic took the time to name all of the characters, to show us the distinct personalities of the characters and how they work together. And that made people want more. And so, and then also because they plan to do continuity, to have the characters return in a second and third and fourth issue, that immediately set them apart from all of the other books that they were doing, except for like, there were stuff like that, like the westerns had their ongoing stories, and the romance had characters that really dove into their personalities and storylines and such. But as far as science fiction, fantasy, superheroes, this was the only thing that they had going for them at the time.
Yeah, and it's what I find fascinating about the Fantastic Four, and you bring up a great point, is that remember superheroes were dead at this point, right? Like they were not selling. You obviously had the main ones like Batman, Superman, but they were probably on fumes at this point as well. Um, and right now, but whatever. So like Marvel just kind of threw this out there. What's fascinating, what you said about, this is not really much different than what they were doing before, except they focused on four main characters that had superpowers. That's kind of the main difference. Also the fact that they didn't have costumes, right?
Right.
Like, so,
Well, I
so
mean,
they,
yeah,
they had no,
it was a superhero book without costumes. And you're right. Superman and Batman they were still selling, and they still had multiple titles going on. But that was it. I mean, that wasn't it. There were a few more other titles and such,
sure. Yeah.
um, but the the phase had passed, and the fad, or whatever you want to call it, had kind of dwindled a little bit. And so, yes, yeah, we don't get the costumes until number 3. And you're
Mhm.
right. So the thing that is, you have a number 1 issue where the main characters don't have costumes. They're not trying to be a superhero book.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're just people with powers. And that's always kind of been the consistent through line for the Fantastic Four, is that these are superheroes, but they're not really superheroes. Phil says superheroes have been ongoing a revival since 1956. Flash, Green Lantern. Well, that's true. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
true. That and uh, eh, uh, you have a good point there, Phil. That stuff had been happening through the late 50s. I forgot about that. Um, but yeah, I mean, for Marvel, they were not touching them at all.
Well, and just for the record, the superhero now comic books in general were struggling, and I can't speak for DC side necessarily completely, but I know comic book superheroes were probably one of the only things that were, if it were selling, because they couldn't do horror books obviously because the comics code had come in and demolished all of that. Um, I just remember that the only thing I can remember about the Fantastic Four was that there was a team of superheroes that I always get this in Avengers mixed up. That's the only thing I can think of, is that they wanted, the Stan Lee's boss, his uncle or whatever. Um, he was like, make a super team, but this was a very half-hearted attempt at that. So, I don't remember how well, because this was 61, right?
You won, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so I mean,
November.
like, I don't I I'm c I don't remember, thinking or hearing. Again, I defer to people who know better than me as far as the history of this, but I don't remember hearing or researching that they were like predominantly selling, great necessarily either, if I remember correctly. The only thing I remember hearing, and Curtis, and people in the chat, please correct me if I'm wrong, was that the Justice League played a part. I know the people said the Avengers. I'm like, no, it wasn't the Avengers. I want to say it was the Fantastic Four that played a part with Justice League being like, we're gonna have a super team. And he's like, well, we're gonna have one too, like kind of a thing, right? So, because they knew the more you had of the heroes together, that's what sold more. And obviously, they were selling like, gimmick things like having, monkeys on the cover a bunch, and like having to be as ridiculous and nutty as possible on the covers. Those were selling. But I remember, like, like Legion of Superheroes, that all that stuff was because you had just these all these different characters on the cover, those were helping selling the books. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Curtis, is there any validity to that? Do you remember hearing anything about that?
I'm not sure. No, I think I do think that I do remember reading that that the Avengers were brought on because of the popularity of the Justice League, um, as kind of a Marvel's response. But I don't know how much like that might be one of the reasons why they put Human Torch in here, because Human Torch would have still been something that maybe some people would have remembered, even though it's not the same Human Torch. But I mean, we're still in the case of Fantastic Four, these are unknown characters, and like you said, they just look like normal people for the most part. Uh, I mean, on the cover, they do a good job of displaying all of their powers really well, so that it is intriguing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. Here's Phil's comment. Phil says
Uh,
JLA was one of DC's top-selling titles, and Martin Goodman wanted his own superhero team, and that became the FF. Yeah. Um, But it's like, but they weren't following the formula,
yeah, they
right? So
weren't.
yeah,
Yeah,
we have a
yeah. Well,
superhero
we
team,
have
but
one.
it's not going to be the same. Like they don't have any heavy hitters that they can put all in one book, so they are not going to. So they have to create kind of from scratch. And
What
they don't give them
which
costumes, and
but
they don't have a secret layer or whatever.
Well, what I think is fascinating, and is this and forgive me, is this the Phil from the group, the Epic group?
Yeah. He's
Do
one of the Phils. There's a few Phils, but Phil is a huge fan of the golden age and silver age of comics, and very knowledgeable. He has a wealth of knowledge in his head.
well, is he the I'm just Phil, I apologize because I wanna say if there's a Phil who always posts pictures of himself with he's from England, is that the same Phil?
Not This is not the
No,
same. Phil's from
okay.
Wales. This Phil's from Wales, I believe, and the it's not the same one. A different. He's a different one.
There's too many. All I gotta say is there's many Phils on the Epic thing, and they have vast knowledge. So Phil Owens, kudos to you, my friend. You're great. So but no, what's awesome about what this kind of confirms is that you know for me the FF and what they represent and the JLA they again multiple heroes, more bang for your buck is kind of where this is going at. And obviously they were trepidatious to go full superhero because they didn't put them in costumes originally. I think if that to me there and that's why I think to me there must be that whole like we don't know if we can do this way because if that was the case they would have put them in costumes like right away in my opinion. And the fact that they didn't and comic books were still kind of like, do we do superhero stuff? Because they're predominantly aimed at like small children. That's what they were aiming for, right? Whereas this doesn't really go that route. It's aimed at children to an extent, but it's not, it's more broad. That's what makes the Marvel universe so unique was that it wasn't just kids, going into it older kids were getting into Marvel books and picking up Fantastic Four. Now, granted, most of them were kids, but still, it was a more broad audience. It was appealed to, and I think that's fascinating that this kind of you see this here that it's not just pure costumes in our faces, which we do eventually get because that's right. That's what we have to get. That's the natural thing of order, you could say. So, um,
And even
I think it's
still though,
fascinating.
if you look at
Okay.
um oh, here's a good comment. Yeah, my theory is the big three at Marvel, Captain America, Submariner, and Human Torch, had been revived in 56, 57, and it had all failed, and Stan may have felt a further revival would be a mistake. That's very true. Yeah, I mean,
Mm,
you have a good point
mm.
there. They did try, and those 56 and 57 comics, I have never read any of them. They never get reprinted as far as I know. So it would be neat to see those come out in a nice epic collection or something. But if you look at the next like superhero comic that comes out
Mhm.
after this, after Fantastic Four, Ant-Man has like one appearance in Tales to Astonish 27, but that's he it I don't even know if they were thinking about a series at that point. I don't think they were. It was just a one-off horror anthology story like the rest of them. And and it's Hulk. Hulk comes now in Incredible Hulk #1 in May 1962, which
Hmm.
is um, just shy of a year, I would say, maybe 9 months after the debut of Fantastic Four. And there's another superhero who's not a superhero. Um, and so it's interesting. And then Thor comes along like a month or two or a couple months after that, and there's another superhero that's not a superhero. He has a different purpose than being a
Man.
superhero.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
It isn't really until Spider-Man comes along, which is actually the same month as the debut of Thor, where we get an actual honest to goodness superhero origin story with a costume and a purpose. And and that's kind of where things really kick off. But so Marvel did a lot of the groundwork creating their world in being not as, and this is funny, not as fantastic. They kept it
Yeah.
more grounded, and I think that that's the thing that set them apart from DC is their first attempts and first outings. And even with the Fantastic Four with their costumes, it's like they look like spaceman costumes. They don't look like
Yeah.
they look like astronaut outfits. They don't look
They're
like
uniforms.
they don't look like superhero costumes. And so they really created a world where these people can exist in our world. And I think that that was
Mhm.
really important for establishing them, Marvel, in their new identity, and
Mhm.
apart from DC, especially.
Yeah, no, I think it's when I read this now, it definitely, I mean, listen, old comics will always be a little rough to read, regardless of how good they are, right? Like, it's just it's always a little rough. It's not gonna be like opening up being like, "This is amazing." It's like, "It's been like 80 years and hasn't aged a day." It's like, "No, there's gonna be age." It's
Yeah,
reality, right? But that being said, I was surprised, Curtis, as I'm plowing through these issues and how much fun I'm having. And they definitely, and just like with Spider-Man, is once Stan Lee and Jack Kirby get, I want to comment about the whole Stan versus Jack thing in a little bit. I want to end on that maybe. Before we leave, we'll have to end on that. Um, but I just, as they kept going, and like with anything you do with repetition and you work on things, you find the flow of things. As the issues as they kind of go down the line, I started enjoying them way more, and having fun things like Doctor Doom show up and everything. It's just, I was surprised at how well it really, like, you could tell Stan and Jack really start hitting they start getting this thing figured out. Every issue gets a little bit more a little no better, yeah, a little better, and just it's a lot of fun. Like, I think that's the biggest thing I would say was like when I go read like older DC books, it's rough for me. Like, I'm like, oof, these are rough. Like, they put me to sleep, man, right away. And I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just being real. I'm not saying these don't get me sleepy, because I just get sleepy when I read any comics, but it's because I'm an old man now. But that being said, I was surprised at how well and how much fun these were, you know? Like, they're just a lot of fun.
absolutely. And I think that's you said it earlier. They were catering to a younger audience with these, and you have to go for the exciting. You have to go for the dramatic and make it as punchy and vibrant as you possibly can. And these ones do that. The exciting thing. So it was Batman in one of the earlier comments said that this volume is the weakest of all of Kirby's volumes. There are 6 epic collections that collect Kirby's Fantastic Four, and I would agree that this one is the weakest, only in relation to the other stuff. On its own,
Mhm.
it's still really good stuff. It's still decent, and
Mhm.
like, you can tell that they are definitely figuring out what they want to do and how they want to portray these characters and how they want the team to function. And so the evolution between these first 18 issues is staggering. Uh, the amount of change that they go through from being just a retooled monster stories or whatever. Like, there's some of it, they get visitors from planet X and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's straight out of the old sci-fi comic handbook there. But but each one of these issues is special because they're introducing characters. And so the amount of creativity they had, that they were allowed to have, and that they put forward, is amazing. If you look at all of the characters in these books, they are all mainstay characters. Yes, some of them, like the Red Ghost, don't pop up as much as some of the other ones, but if you look at any one of these villains, any one of these I guess Kurgo from Planet X or whatever is not a character that comes back very often, um but they all just keep on coming back because they are all so great. Even in their first appearance, they're like fully realized villains who have a purpose that is unique from the other villains. And they're fun, and they're not all the same. Puppet Master is not the same as Impossible Man, and is not the same as Doctor Doom, who's not the same as like Namor is one of their main villains in these early days. It's so neat, and it's not just the villains, but the concepts, the concept of their building, the concept of the time platform, the concept of the gamma rays, and I'm not gamma rays, the cosmic rays, like all of those things are not only essential to Fantastic Four history and influence the writers of today, but they influence all of the Marvel comics now. It's like all of these elements
Mhm.
are established in these first 18 issues, and it really writes the roadmap for every book that comes out of Marvel Comics after that.
You know, you stole something from me, Curtis. We didn't even talk about this, but you brought up this, and Kurgo being the exception. I wanted to mention how these 18 issues, they establish the groundwork of the Fantastic Four that is still you're still paying dividends off today. I mean, Red Ghost is maybe the other one that's kind of not always around, but the writers have used that character quite a bit. But I mean,
They even
Impossible
mentioned him in
Man,
the movie.
yeah. Yeah, he was supposed to be in the movie, but
I
they cut
know
his
he was
scenes.
supposed to be in the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, like, so I mean, it's fascinating that all these characters they introduce in this are so pivotal, like Alicia and the Puppet Master, right? Like that's she becomes the Thing's wife and the mother of their adopted children, which is really cool. And like there is just so many great things that they establish in this in these the whole Thing versus Hulk, like the whole rivalry is introduced here, like it's we're talking such the Super Scroll, for God's sakes, the scrolls, I mean, like all so much foundation of the Marvel universe is really laid out in these first 18 issues. You brought up the Hulk, a great point too, of like how they establish this non-superhero character and they bring him for a crossover. Like the crossovers are born, if I'm not mistaken, through this. Like, I mean, this is all through like whole intercontinuity is really birthed through here. And that's with the Hulk. I mean, think about this. The Human Torch existing at all is a byproduct of that whole continuing on what we had from the Atlas days and using Submariner and things like that. Like we're using these characters and we're going to keep using it and using what came before as their foundation. And I just, I think it's really brilliant that we've that how Stan really used this and this kept reusing, like bringing Doctor Doom back, right? Like and keep using these characters and everything. I thought it was Um, really awesome. So I thought it was a great point that I wanted to bring up already, but you beat me to it, which is fine. You're the guest. You could do that. You know, before we get to the before we get to the end here, we got a little bit left, and I want to save most of it for this conversation. But really quickly, I want to just get this out there. And if anything you want to bring up too before we get to the last little topic, I was, as a Marvel zombie, I I knew who the Red Ghost was and everything, the Super Apes. I never took the time, Curtis, in my life to ever find out the origin story of the Red Ghost. Ever.
Okay, yeah.
So when I sat down and read this issue, I went, oh, so that's why the apes have that weird, like these weird powers. I was like, why does these apes have these weird powers? I don't understand this. I never understood why. And Red Ghost, I just figured whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, like they have the same cosmic rays as the Fantastic Four do. Okay, that makes more sense now. So
Well, and
that
he's
was
called the Red Ghost. He's called the
because
Red
he's
Ghost because
communist,
he's communist, and like the space race at the time with the in the Cold War is like this was
right?
all very topical political commentary that they were making in at that time and such. And so it was yeah, it's neat to see. It's neat to see that.
See,
FF number
Phil,
12. Go to his next comment
really,
there.
yeah, I will just want to comment here. You're right to an extent because there's like Crime Master, there's Mr. Big, or was that his name? I always forget what is that his name? What's the guy with the white face? Not the chameleon, but the it's like he's the reporter. Is it Mr. Big?
Mr. Big. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, Mr. Big.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Big, Crime Master. There's a lot more duds in those than the Fantastic Four does, in my opinion. So
Big
just
man. Yeah,
just
yeah, big man.
big man. Yeah,
Well,
yeah, go
but
ahead.
yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, yeah, there's that robot brain that he fights in one of those later issues and such. And but but
Living
Ditko
brain.
hits it
Yeah.
out of the park so many times. Like those duds
You're
don't
right.
even matter.
How about this? When he hits, they're like iconic. Whereas I would
Yeah,
say the Fantastic Four villains aren't as iconic as the Spider-Man villains. Just, for the most besides Doom,
yeah,
obviously. So
true.
anyway,
And Doctor Doom, like Doctor Doom shows up in Amazing Spider-Man number, what is it, number
right.
4, I think.
Yeah.
And that like what's really neat is they solidify the the shared universe really quickly. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is Phil's comment in
Mhm.
FF number 12, Fantastic Four,
This is
Four and the
wild.
Hulk, Amazing Spider-Man number 1, Spider-Man meets the Fantastic Four, both released on the same day,
It's
and
wild.
that spurs on the shared universe because yeah, and like I said, just a couple months later, Doctor Doom shows up. Um, in the pages of Spider-Man further and a lot of that is a marketing tool that Stanley uses. It's like, well, if you like Doctor Doom, you should check out Fantastic Four, my other book over here. No, you like the
Mhm.
Hulk? Definitely check out him in his own magazine. Like it's all
Right.
to help with the cross promotion, but at the same time, it's so exciting because now there's
Mhm.
a chance that these characters are going to meet and then they all do. And nowadays, it's like now they're all on the Avengers. But yeah, like that's the logical path for all of these characters. They meet and then they become Avengers.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I hate the fact that you're wrong. You're not wrong, but you're not wrong. And really quickly, I'm just gonna say this right now for my homie here, Phil Owens, ball knower right here. This guy, whew, he's ball
Yeah,
knower. All right.
he's a wealth of
Um,
information. I'm
yeah,
glad he's
dude,
watching.
yeah. Thank you, Phil. Yeah, I might have to have you on, Phil. You got know your stuff. I might you get you and Alex from Comic Book
He's a little
Historians.
camera shy. If you could get on, that would be amazing. But I don't.
You know what, Phil? You can
Unfortunately,
turn Phil. You can turn your camera off. Yeah, I don't care. I can make up for both of us. I'm animated. I can keep people. I get people headaches when I move around. But okay, I want to end on this topic because I think this is important. And we may have even talked about this. Maybe I have definitely talked about it with many people. I'm not sure if we have. I think we may have, Curtis. But the one thing I want to end on really quick. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to get where your head's at on this. the whole Stan Lee versus Jack Kirby debate, like who was more important, blah, you know, I listen, I want to preface a couple things. Did Stan Lee undermine Jack Kirby for years? Yes. That is a fact. Like he took as much credit for a long time and then backtracked over, later in life after, unfortunately, I would say Jack passed away, unfortunately. Um, you know, but I do feel like because Stan spent so many years taking credit, and then everyone has now, like, I feel like there's like a backlash against Stan. Like he doesn't do anything. He didn't do anything. And I don't really prescribe to that personally. I feel that it's just like with any kind of, and this is just my opinion. I'm curious where you stand on this, but let me give my spiel and let you have the floor, my friend. I feel I'm a big collaborator. I love collaborating with people. As a musician, it's one of the most ultimate forms of collaboration. In fact, I would say comics and rock music have a lot in common of how much collaboration you have, music in general, but especially in rock music, because you're having so many different, like, instrumentations at once together of multiple people kind of working together in a small space, like in comic books. I would say that you need both men and the other people working together to make this combination work, in my opinion. And again, I don't remember if we've had this conversation before, but I feel regardless, it bears repeating and revisiting because of these first 18 issues and the first kind of run. I feel that one is maybe not more important than the other because they both need each other. There's not like a one. If Stan Lee without Jack Kirby on this would not be Fantastic Four, and without Stan Lee, the Fantastic Four just don't exist. So I feel they are so important and they are so integral for their success, even going forward, that you can't undermine one or the other. They're both important. I'm curious where you land on this.
I would agree with you. Yeah, there are definitely people out there who um just can't. It is great that Phil says yes. That is fantastic, and I will tune into those episodes whenever you have them on. That's amazing. That would be so good. Um, yeah, there are definitely people out there who see Stan as the ultimate weasel, and there's no
Which
good redeeming him or anything like that. Um, he certainly had his problems, and they certainly damaged relationships. Like, and I think the case is even worse with Ditko than it was
Oh
with
yeah, it's
Kirby.
way worse with Ditko. Yeah,
Um, but you're right. I think there's a lot in here that we have to give Stan credit for. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you what the percentage division is or anything like that. But
exactly. Yeah,
we do know that Kirby did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the flow of the comic and the storytelling, because Stan would give
sure.
him like a couple paragraphs of a plot or maybe even less, and Jack would plot out an entire issue and draw it all, and that takes a lot of work. So um, I don't think that there's any denying that all of these early comics that were co-created, co-written by Stan Lee, that a lot of the heavy lifting was done by the artists that he was working for. Um, yeah.
Well, again, and let's put it in perspective here too. You know, you when a songwriter writes a song, and let's say a guitar player brings in the main chorus of a song, doesn't have any melody, right? And without all the heavy lifting of that structure of, like, here's the verse, here's the chorus, here's a bridge, etc. Here's the intro. You know, if a vocalist comes on and see where I'm going with this, puts on their lyrics and their melody, that brings it home, makes it marketable for the masses, right?
So here's
Um,
this is the difference, I think, is that the the lead, let's say the vocalist comes in and says, "Hey guys, I want to do a song, and I really think that maybe it should have three verses a chorus, and a bridge, and probably should have a pretty good hook at the beginning, something that maybe the guitarist does. Go for it, guys. And then the guitarist does the whole thing, writes the melody line, and then writes some lyrics. And then the vocalist comes in and says, "That's awesome. I've got some new lyrics I'm going to put over top of that, and I'm going to say that I helped co-write this song."
See, I'm going to push back a little bit. This is where I'm going to disagree, because I think that even though the flow, because to me, like the layouts, that's the flow of the song. The melody, to me, the melody is the interactions of the characters. And those, I think, which again, Stan Lee knows where it's all going, and he knows, and even though Jack does, again, majority of the heavy lifting, he binds it all together with the melody, which to me is the dialogue, and to me, the narration, he brings it all together because he makes it fun. And I think, and again, this is all from the 60s perspective. So I mean, like, Marvel style is it's hard to, it's hard to pinpoint exactly, but to me, when I read this, it does feel that Jack does all the heavy lifting, but the really important melody part, again, and this is my own, as far as my own, using an analogy, is that Stan Lee is the melody. And I think Jack is the backbone structure. He's not, because he's more important than the bass line. He's more important than the drumming. He's the entire song structure, but he's not
Well,
the melody, in my opinion.
I'm going to push back on there, because in comics, if we're going with the music analogy,
Sure.
the flow of action and the way panels go from one to another, that's the melody. That's not like a guitar riff or whatever. So go back to that picture of the thing transforming into the thing,
Sure. Sorry.
because this is the melody. Right, see if you can find that one. Yeah. So these 6 panels, this is the melody here, is the pictures. You could take away all of the dialogue and you know exactly what these characters are feeling. But if you have just the dialogue with no picture, it doesn't hit as hard.
This is such a great conversation, by the way. I live for discussions and debates like this, because I agree to an extent, but I think, because a reason why I push back, and I love this discussion, is because as a kid, I read comics by pictures only. And I remember reading back when I could learn to read, I was surprised at how much oftentimes I'd misinterpret things because of that, of things like this. Now, I can look at this, and I don't see this complete as his layouts, because again, like I feel like the melody is debatable. It can be both. It can kind of be both. Like a guitar line can be a melody, right? The main melody. And to me, like, I look at this, something like this. This is more of a structure of a song more than the melody. Again, to me, and I think, but I do feel like a lot of times the guitars can be the lead and there be a vocal on it too. And people could still love the guitar more than the vocal line too. And this could kind of treads on that territory a little bit. Because I do think that the 2-paragraph thing that is more important than we're giving it to. I mean, because 2 paragraphs is like, that doesn't mean anything. I do think that because Stan knows where it's going, he knows how to structure how to get the voices and get the outcome he needs to get the interactions and make it playful, to get things like this, to make that have impact, later on, without just being blind and not knowing where it's going and just being like, dude, like, which in my opinion was a lot of DC writers back in the day. You don't get stuff like this. So this is my whole point of like having 2 people is so important for that whole collaboration, because you need Stan Lee to have the know where to tell Jack where it's going. Jack do that heavy lifting. Again, that all that information is pivotal for Stan to structure it. And maybe I'm giving Stan too much credit. I don't know. But as a collaborator, I can see where, like this the other day, I'm working on a music project right now, Kurtis, and I'll get out of here. We'll put it, and I'll let you have the last word after I say this thing. We'll get out of here. but I just recently did a thing where my guitar player was music project we're working on. He had a song, it was on a bass, and I play the bass on our project for the most part. And he was like, "What do you think of this? What do you think of this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't feel it," but I'm like, "Why don't we make it halftime and we'll start there?" And then we cut it in half as far as like the timing, so it's not like sped up. We just slowed it down like completely half, and now it's a completely different song, and it's great, and we love it. And I would never have done that. I wrote the lyrics and the vocals to it. I would have never have done that, or it would never exist if he never showed me this bass line that turned into what it is. It feels a lot like that. Here's a structure. Here's a structure, Jack. Jack goes, okay, here's, puts out this amazing thing. And then Stan, because he knows that 2 paragraph where the structure is and where the characters are going, he's able to orchestrate. So anyway, that's just kind of my, my thing. I'll let you have the last word and we'll get out of here.
The last word about this topic or otherwise?
Both.
Okay. I think that comics work the best when the words and the pictures work together. I think a lot of the times Stan Lee insisted on dialogue that didn't need to be there, that he would just repeat, have the characters state what is exactly being shown. So I think that actually this pairing of these 6 panels right here is really, really good. The dialogue and the pictures work as a whole, and like I said, if you strip away the pictures, the dialogue doesn't necessarily make sense, and that's what I love about comics is when the pictures and the words can't exist apart from each other. So whether or not Stan, I don't know. It's not a debate that I particularly care about, because it's like we'll never really know, and people will never change their tune in certain ways. But so I will. My last word is that my favorite issue of this book is number 8. And that's not just because it's a great issue, but it's because I own this one, and I bought it many years ago at a comic convention for, I think the guy wanted something like $100, and I talked him down to $75. That was the most I've ever spent. It still is the most I've ever spent on a comic.
That's quite a bit. That's quite a bit.
But I think the going rate for this particular book in somewhat decent shape is around $400 to $500 now. So I've got a good return on the investment. And I was really hoping that John Malkovich was going to play the Puppet Master in the movie, not Red Ghost, but I wanted him to be Puppet Master so that this would skyrocket even more in value. And I'm waiting for that moment, then I'll sell it off. But anyway, this is a good issue. Puppet Master is one of my favorite Fantastic Four characters, and he doesn't get enough time in the sun. But it's so good.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Puppet Master has not been my favorite. So
Oh man, he's so good. There are some really, really great Puppet Master stories out there, and I'm sure we'll get to them eventually through our read through here.
Yeah, well, and Curtis, I did enjoy the new Warriors issue we read with DeFalco and Paul Ryan. So I mean, that was a great. I love that issue, but that's because there's a team up fight book, which I love. I'm a sucker for those issues. So, anyway, yeah. So we have completed our first era into Jack Kirby, and Stan Lee's run. Next month, I've got a big Halloween extravaganza scheduled, so we won't have any FF issues next month to go through. But we'll aim for the best month would be perfect for us, because we're going to be doing it's for American Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, we will do a family centric Fantastic Four episodes. We'll talk later about that, Curtis. But plan on, if you're cool with it, maybe plan on doing something in November.
Yeah,
around this time frames, our usual time. But yeah, next month we've got a bunch of Halloween episodes. We got I'll say it right now. I'm sure you're familiar with the Fantagraphics book. My favorite things is Monsters.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
Oh yeah, Yeah, my wife and her best friend are going to be on that episode with me. So we're going to talk about that masterpiece. Talk about that. We're going to talk about this other masterpiece, which I just started reading, which is masterpiece because people always talk about it. This will be also next month. So
Nice.
lots of fun stuff. And I may talk about this. I'm not sure yet. This is my private book club. We're talking about this. So,
Oh yeah, I haven't picked that one up yet.
oh,
Very cool.
Oh, it smells amazing, by the way. Oh, it smells so good. The paper is, oh God, just give me. Can we just do that paper forever, please? Anyway, yeah. So lots of fun stuff. Kurtis, what do you have down the pipeline?
Well, I mean, I have. So today actually we launched, or yesterday we launched. What day is it today? Tuesday? Yeah, yesterday we launched a Kickstarter. I work for Clover Press. We have a license with Marvel Comics to do some Marvel books, and we launched a Kickstarter to reprint the Spider-Man newspaper comic strip by Stan Lee and John Romita from 1977 to 1980. Those 4 years and 4 volumes, 1 year per volume. They're soft cover, they're fairly affordable, and we have a bunch of really cool rewards. So go over to Kickstarter and look up the Spider-Man newspaper comics. Because we are kickstarting that right now. And if this one is successful, which it's actually doing really well right now, then we'll keep on going and we'll keep on doing more volumes after this and keep the cycle going. There's that. Tomorrow afternoon, I usually do live streams on Tuesdays, but I didn't do one today, so I'll do it tomorrow. So tomorrow at 3:30, I'll do my unboxing live stream on my YouTube channel. And then I think I'm supposed to be on near mint condition again to go through some more Marvel solicits next Thursday. So not this Thursday, but a week from Thursday.
That's awesome. Tell him Paul from Comic Binge says hi. He probably doesn't know who I am, but he seems like a solid dude. So tell him I said what's up.
Let him know.
Excellent. Yeah. So subscribe to the channel, like the video. Kurtis will be on hopefully in November sometime. We'll figure out what we're gonna do. Until then, Chris isn't here, so I'll say it for him. Read more comics. Good night, everybody.